Okay, thanks for tuning in. And Lars is again joining me to continue what we are doing with William Lilly's examples from the horary context. So we are exploring the examples given by William Lilly in his book. Thanks, Lars, for joining, and I think it's good to directly jump in.
Great. Yeah, glad to be here. So today, like we spoke of, we're going to do the question about a ship lost at sea. And this is a really interesting part of the book. It's actually in chapter 1. And so as you can tell, we're not going in any particular order here in terms of
Yeah.
the examples, right? But in chapter 1 of the well, not chapter 1, sorry, technically it's chapter 25, 26, but it's or something around there, but it's the chapter on the first house. So that's what I mean by chapter 1. It's like, chapter on questions concerning the first house. And so Lilly basically puts the questions concerning like ships and their condition at sea under the first house, because the idea is that it's almost like the ship is like an alternate body for the person in a way, so the first house deals with the body, and they're asking about this other body that is, I don't know, I'm not doing a good job explaining it, but like my brother and I used to talk about how like your car will, in the modern day age, like your vehicle, it's like an extension of you and your home in a sense. It can take a lot of your karmas actually, and so my brother would call it the corpus mechanicum as a joke, like the mechanical body, So yeah, the ship would be kind of the same thing. And what's so interesting about this part of the book where he talks about like how to analyze a ship and then gives a couple examples is I realized that we could apply this to our cars in the modern day. Like we could come up with a system of horary astrology wherein like each house / sign signifies something about your car. Now I think this would be fun. I never actually did it, but I've kind of always wanted to. I think I would need to have a better knowledge of car mechanics to really do it and make use of it, so I never did. But like, if I was a car mechanic, I would definitely come up with this. And so like what we find in Lilly, for example, is like to Aries, they give the breast of the ship, right? To Taurus, what is under the breast, a little towards the water. Gemini, the rudder or stern. Cancer, the bottom or the floor of the ship. And this all pertains to the houses too. So really it's really becomes the houses. So first house is Aries, second house is Taurus, and so on, and it goes around like the circular chart does. And let's see, I think, yeah, like Sagittarius refers to the mariners themselves, so that would be ninth house. Capricorn, the ends of the ship, and so on. He doesn't give something for the mast. There must be maybe Libra. It's hard to tell. But anyway, the point is you could do this for your car too. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people who wanted to experiment with that,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But otherwise, yeah, let's just get to it,
Yeah, and for ship, I think we also need to see the elements and the nature of the sign, whether if it is, the water element or fire element or something. Because when you talk about the ship, a lot depends upon the water element, and and for ship to be in a good condition, the water elements in the chart and also the rising sign and the rising lot should be in a reasonably good condition.
Yeah.
For the ship to be in good, for the ship to be in a good condition.
Yeah, so let's just take a look at the chart, and let's delineate it a little bit before we read Lily's delineation, just for fun, and just to kind of see what we can get out of it. I haven't read the example in a long time, so okay. So yeah, so the first thing we would do is basically check the Lord of the Ascendant and the Moon, and just like in a regular horary chart about just any old person or whatever that's asking the question. So basically, we would hope to find the Moon in good condition, right, and the Ascendant in good condition, free from malefics and with the benefics. So we do find, in fact, the Moon in really good condition, exalted in Taurus,
Yeah.
with Jupiter in the bounds of Jupiter, ruling the ascendant. So it's a double significator here.
Sure.
And we find the bounds of the ascendant, Jupiter's bounds. And of course, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So this is like extremely auspicious, I would say, in terms of the ship lost at sea, because that's what this question's about. It's about a ship lost at sea and if it's okay, if it's going to survive, recover, that sort of thing. So we have, the moon applying to a benefic Jupiter, right? And free from the rays of the malefics, right? Neither malefics are aspecting the moon. We've got this nice trine from the sun. So we've got both lights above the horizon, nice trine from the sun. Mars is hidden away in the 12th house. So whatever damages to the ship have happened, they would be to maybe the oars.
Maybe just to unsettle the course of the journey, but not kind of bring any ill fortune on a complete thing.
Right. Yeah, the oars may have been damaged because the 12th refers to the oars, and then Saturn is in the 11th house as well. So that would be the master or the captain of the ship, according to Lilly at least. So that could mean, that the captain has fallen ill or is under some kind of distress or is incapacitated. Maybe
the captain is not alive as well because the Mars is in the 12th house, which puts some kind of certain uncertainty on captain's survival.
Sure, absolutely. So that could be problematic. We also do find, I don't know if Lilly would have used this, but we find that Saturn and Mars are hemming Jupiter and the moon, right? This is like called the Papakatari Yoga and Jyotish. So this is again showing, the ship is lost, right? So there's some sort of distress surrounding the ship, right? But it's theoretically not enough to like really destroy or harm the ship fully. He also recommends looking at the lords of the 8th, 12th, 6th, and 4th to see what kind of condition they're in. And so the lord of the 4th and the 12th is Mercury aspecting the ascendant. Okay. But Mercury's combust. So on some level, there could have been some damage to the bottom of the ship, but it's probably more minor damage. It's probably not like terrible or anything like that. Yeah. The 8th lord is Saturn, again in the 11th, possibly symbolizing death or distress to the captain. And then the 6th lord is Jupiter, which the moon is with and applying to, but Jupiter also owns the 10th. And I think Jupiter is in his own bounds here. That's what it looks like, at least. So, again, there's maybe some challenges, but the great thing here is that moon receives Jupiter. So whatever challenges are happening, and Venus and Jupiter are exchanging signs. So again, this mitigates a lot of the challenges, and probably the ship is going to find its way back and so on. The mariners themselves is the 9th house, so ruled by Saturn and with the presence of the South Node. Again, showing that the mariners themselves are also maybe overcome with like scurvy or sick or, I don't know, in some kind of distress of some sort. But again, like fortunately, we have the sun receiving Saturn and Saturn receiving the sun. So this will mitigate a lot of the harm that is being potentially shown by Saturn. Yeah. Actually, especially them being in the bounds of Jupiter, right? And even Mercury helps out because Saturn's in the bounds of Mercury, and so there's even some minor mutual reception happening between these two. Sure. And there's even some reception happening between Mercury and Mars because Mercury's in the exaltation of Mars. Mars is in the sign of Mercury. So, I mean, all in all, it's not horrendous. It's looking pretty good.
Yeah, sure.
And so let's see what Lilly says. Yeah. So in December 1644, a merchant in London having sent out a ship to the coast of Spain for trade, had several times news that his ship was lost or cast away, there having been a little before very tempestuous weather, in so much that many ships were sunk and shipwrecked. He would have given 60 pounds, I guess, in the 100 for the insurance of her.
Mm-hmm.
But so general was the report of her loss that none of the insurance companies would meddle. No, not upon any terms. A friend of the merchants propounds the questions to me what I thought of the ship if sunk or living, whereupon I erected the figure preceding, and having well considered what was requisite in this manner of judgment, I gave my opinion, that the ship was not lost, but did live, and though of late in some danger, yet was now recovered.
Sure.
My judgment was grounded upon the considerations in the art following. And actually, the moon applies to the sun, not to Jupiter. I'm sorry. It is very close to Jupiter, though. And one of Bonatti's 146 considerations is that an aspect rarely trumps a conjunction. So you have to consider a few things. There's some mutual reception between Jupiter and moon. They're conjunct, right? So that may actually be overriding that trine from the sun. But we'll see what Lilly has to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first place, the ascendant being the 11th degree and 33-minute of Cancer showed the bulk or body of the ship. There does also ascend with these degrees of Cancer 3 fixed stars in our horizon, wholly almost of the nature of Saturn. I find Saturn casts his sinister square out of the 11th house, but from a cardinal sign to, or very near the cusp of the ascending degrees, thereby afflicting it. After this square aspect, I found the moon in her exaltation, casting a sextile sinister to the degree ascending, interposing her sextile between the ascendant and the opposition aspects of Mercury and Sun in the 7th, which otherwise had been dangerous, for all opposite aspects to the ascendant in this judgment are dangerous. Okay, so that's interesting. So he's using the aspects pretty simply. And by sinister, he just means that the aspect is from the left, which is odd because in Hellenistic it's considered from the right, but for some reason they started considering it reversed. So that's what sinister refers to. So don't worry about that. It doesn't mean bad. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah. So we forgot to mention Saturn squaring the ascendant. Sure, that's kind of a doozy there. Absolutely. And so, yeah, we do find, I mean, again, like using the Papagatari method as well of Indian astrology, we find a similar thing to what Lilly is saying, right? So I don't think Lilly's going to talk about that because I don't think he utilized that kind of technique, but it's interesting that what we said basically through a different technique is in line with what Lilly seems to be hinting at here. So, okay, cool. So then from the ascendant's affliction, both by the square of Saturn and presence of fixed stars of his like nature, I judge this ship was very much of the nature of Saturn, meaning a sluggish, heavy one and of no good speed or very sound. And Cancer being a weakly sign made me judge the condition, building and quality of the sitch was such. And so it was confessed. From hence, and for that, the tail of the dragon is in the 9th house, I judged the ship had been in some affliction or distress in her journey, because the 9th refers generally to the journey.
Sure.
Occasioned from such casualties as are signified by Saturn, vis-a-vis had received some bruise, leak, damage in or near her breast, because Aries, the sign wherein Saturn is, represents that part, thereby afflicting it. Okay, so that's interesting. So maybe he is prioritizing the signs over the houses here. So yeah, so basically the ship is wounded in the breast. Okay, that's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. So, but in regard the moon, who is lady of the ascendant, is placed in the 11th house, and in her exaltation is no manner of way impeded, but by a benevolent aspect applying to a trine of Mercury and Sun, and is by bodily presence so near to Jupiter and all the significators above the earth, a thing very considerable in this judgment. So, again, most things are above the horizon.
Yeah, that's...
Go ahead.
That's very significant. And one more thing, I think it's that Sun is separating from an aspect from Saturn, which probably indicates that the worst is behind, and whatever they lost is probably not so much, and they're not going to lose much in their...
Yeah, and if we take the 2nd house ruled by the Sun, maybe they lost some goods.
Yes, for sure.
You know?
Yeah, that they lost, and the fact that they it probably doesn't kind of indicate or hamper their journey forward, and they can probably move forward in their journey and reach the destination or home, whatever it
Cool.
may be. Because I think Sun is separating from Saturn. That's a very important thing. So Mercury is also uh, just separated.
Separating from Saturn. Yeah.
Uh,
Cool. Okay, so then besides, I observed no infortunes in angles, which was one other good argument. For these considerations, I judged the ship was not cast away, but was living, and that the sailors and officers of the ship were lively and in good condition. The next question was where the ship was, upon what coast, and when any news would come of her. Herein I considered the moon was fixed and locally in the 11th house. Taurus is a southern sign, but in the east quarter of heaven, verging towards the south. Her application to a trine of Mercury, and he is in Capricorn, a south sign and west angle, made me judge the ship was southwest from London, and upon our own coast, or near those which lie between Ireland and Wales. And that may just have something to do with the familiarity Lilly had with the region. That may also have something to do with Lilly gives different places
assigned to
in
different
countries assigned to different signs. So
signs.
I'm not going to look that up right now, but that may also, it's possible Ireland and Wales also have something to do with Taurus or with Capricorn.
And I think the other notion is that generally each sign has a direction or is specified with one direction. So based upon where Lilly casted this chart and based upon the planets, as you just read, are placed in various signs, I think Lilly might have probably derived the directions based upon that as well.
Yeah, because actually I am looking it up and it doesn't look like. Oh no, Ireland is Taurus. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, Ireland is related to Taurus. Okay, cool.
Oh.
Okay, I don't know why, but it is. Okay, so I judged her at that time to be in some harbor because Taurus, wherein the moon is fixed. And in the 11th house, which is the house of comfort and relief. So, it's in a stable place. Yeah. And that she was put into some harbor to mend her defects or rents. It proved true that she was in the west and in a harbor. And perhaps part of that is we can see that in Jupiter retrograde, repairing, retrograde, repairing.
Yeah. And probably the ship is going to run much better than it ever did.
Yeah, probably. And I apologize because I really did think that Lilly was going to take the houses as the parts of the ship, but he really is just taking the signs as the parts of the ship. So that's a different methodology than I had suspected. So anyway, because the moon applied to a trine of Mercury and Sun, and they in an angle, and was herself as well as they very swift in motion, meaning she was moving fast, and did want but a few minutes of their perfect trine, right? She's just a few minutes shy of making a perfect trine with Mercury and then the Sun. I judged there would be news or letters or a certain discovery of the ship in a very short time. The significators so near aspect, I said either that night or in 2 days, and so it proved. And you must observe that it gave me good encouragement when I saw the lot of fortune disposed by Mars and Mercury, to whom the moon applied to be in reception with Mars, as I pointed out earlier. As also that the moon, by so forceful an aspect, did apply to the Sun, who is lord of the second house or of substance, an argument the merchant should increase his stock and not lose by that adventure. You shall also observe that Jupiter has his antiscion in the 9th of Leo, the very cusp of the second house. So that means that Jupiter's antiscion, which is about 8.5 degrees Leo, is in the is very, I guess, near the second house cusp is what he's saying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Mars has his anti-scion, falls upon the very degree ascending. Okay, it does. These were good testimonies of safety. Mars as lord of the 11th and dispositor of the part of fortune, and Jupiter as lord of the 10th, vis-a-vis trade and commerce. So we have a situation here where Mars is basically becoming accidentally benefic, according to Lilly. And that does make sense, because not only does Lars interject his own name into the video here. No, not only does Mars rule the 11th of good fortune, but it also rules the 5th, and partly the 5th, and the lot of fortune, right? Which is also dealing with beneficence and good fortune and things of that nature, although it is retrograde, which is interesting, but Lilly's taking it as a positive testimony. Mm-hmm. And Jupiter is lord of the 10th of trade and commerce. So Mars and Jupiter being so disposed as lords of the 10th, 11th, lot of fortune, Mars being conjoined the ascendant by Anticyon, Jupiter being kind of widely conjoined the second by Anticyon, are giving Lilly this testimony that the merchant's not going to lose a lot from his ship getting harmed and being delayed. Yeah. So moving on. Besides, usually when the moon applies to a good aspect of a retrograde planet, it brings the matter to an end one way or other speedily and when least suspected, because retrograde planets are kind of wonky, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's a general maxim in such like cases, if the moon applies to the fortunes or by good aspect to any planet or planets in angles, then there is a reason we hope well. That's quintessential here. Yeah. Because even though at first glance you think, oh, that Saturn is really bad and, you know, Mercury's the 12th lord and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, like the moon applying with reception to a benefic, that is, and not afflicted at all, right? That is so key. That overrides almost everything else, right? So it's really important to always, you know, really have a look at the moon. And in fact, like Bonatti and others really give a lot of consideration to the moon. There's like 16 to 20 ways in which the moon can be like corrupted or strengthened or something like that, I believe. So we'll really have to look at that. But there's a little bit more here for me to read. So let me just finish it out.
Okay.
So, and it's a general maxim in such like cases, if the moon applies to fortunes. Okay, I already read that. Yeah. The ascendant free from the presence of infortunes, a good sign. Lord of the ascendant above the earth and the moon and their dispositors, good signs. Lord of the ascendant in 10th, 11th, or 9th house is good. Lord of the ascendant in trine or sextile with Jupiter or Lord of the 11th, good. And, you know, as Lilly didn't point this out, but there is, again, that what in Jyotish we'd call a parivartana yoga between Jupiter and Venus, right? They're exchanging signs. And that is generally very strengthening in my experience, right? Venus in Sag, Jupiter in Taurus. Some people have said that like parivartanas are challenging if one of the lords is lord of if one of the houses involved is 6, 8, or 12. And I think that that's true to a certain extent, but I don't think it annihilates the auspiciousness of the parivartana yoga, or what we call basically generosity or mutual reception in traditional astrology. So the fact that Venus is in the 6th instead of the 10th, again, that makes sense because the ship did have some problems, right? This is not the strongest, most well-built ship. It got damaged, it got off course, and it was delayed. Okay, it's not the end of the world, though, because that mutual reception really helps that, you know? So it's damaged, but it comes through. So, yeah, that sums it up for this one.
Okay. So I think it's interesting. I'm just kind of loving this.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll get back to you with another Lilly's example, and until then, bye-bye.
Okay.